Okay, hi everyone. Actually, we're just gonna get started. If someone will join us later, then you'll probably miss some good slides at the beginning, but especially the ones about me. Yeah, anyway, there was already a web accessibility session today here, and this is why we decided, because that session was more about web accessibility in general. That is why I decided to talk more about Drupal part. So there will be a couple of slides at the beginning, just for getting started, but then we'll go to more of the web accessibility features that we have in Drupal 8. So first about me, my name is Bostjan Kovac. I'm from Slovenia, from Ljubljana. I'm working at Agile Drop, which can be also seen by this T-shirt, and I'm known as Bostjan with more an English version of my name on Drupal.org, on Twitter, and everywhere else. So first, a little bit of my inspiration and motivation to start doing and investigating web accessibility is actually I was working on a couple of projects where web accessibility was a demand. So that is why I started to get interested in. And in 2015, I went to Eric Eggers. He's working for the W3C. He had a session on Drupal Camp Vienna, and that is actually the time when I realized that I'm very ignorant about all the people who can't access the web as for example, me or other people without any disabilities. So that is also where I decided that I don't want to be ignorant and I want to learn more about these things. So first, we'll go by starting what are today web pages, and we can focus on Drupal. So today web pages really have awesome UI. You know, we have all the case studies. We have lots of people and lots of millions investigating what people are looking for. You have Google, you have Apple, everyone else is really working a great job by doing the amazing UIs. We have beautiful designs, probably in the history of internet, the most beautiful designs ever. And we also have lightning speed. For example, now in Drupal 8, we're all talking about Memcache, about Redis, about Varnish, about BigPipe, the latest addition to the Drupal. And, you know, there's lots of buzz around this. And then there's a developer, which is not quite well visible here, but this is a GIF of developer's face, which is really worried when it comes to accessibility. So this is something that that developer looks like on the meeting. And when the client says, but is it possible? Can you do it? Our page web accessible. These are the three developers that are usually on the meeting. Of course, just calming the client that they will be able to do it, but obviously they're not quite sure if they will be able to do it. So this is we'll get to these guys later on. This is one of the tweets that I really like. Tim Berners-Lee, we probably all know him since you're working on something that he created. So this was in the London Olympics, the opening ceremony. He was also there in the middle of the stadium, and he tweeted this. So this is for everyone. And by this, he meant the internet. So this is really important. He's also a member of W3C. And what he wanted to say is that when he created the World Wide Web, he was thinking about providing this World Wide Web for everyone, not just for the ones that are able to see all the colors and actually are not blind and stuff like this. But this is actually the quote that I really like. So it is for everyone. First, a couple of facts. 15% of the world's population have some sort of disability, which makes them the biggest minority in the world. And it comes in different ways, in different ways of disability, but this is the number. This is the number of millions of adults that have significant difficulties in functioning. And there is 8% of men who have some form of color blindness. Especially men is here because of those of you who don't know, men are the only one. Women can't be colorblind because they're only transferring to their male kids. So only the men, and especially this is really common in the a Northern European ancestry. I don't know why, but this is the case, and I'm also one of them who has a little bit of, you know, those circles when you're doing the driving license. I don't see, maybe 1 out of 10 is the number that I can see the number. So those were all the numbers for permanent disabilities. But we also have situational disabilities. You can have a broken arm. If your right arm is broken, you of course can't use your mouse properly. You can also lost your eyeglasses. You will have to zoom in the page because obviously you can't see without eyeglasses. You're looking at the video in a noisy room. You need subtitles because there is a noisy room and you want to see a YouTube video, and YouTube is providing the automatic subtitles now recently. So actually it's recognizing speech and doing the subtitles for you. And there's also some other ways that other cases where we can talk about accessibility. Responsive web pages. So I'm creating my page responsible for all of the people who are accessing my web page through the mobile device. So this is also accessibility. Multilingual page is if the page for this webcam, for example, would be only in Croatian language, it would probably mean that quite a lot of people won't be able to navigate. So the organizers made it in English, so they made it accessible to wider audience. Of course, there are still people who don't speak English, but at least the percentage is much higher than if the page would be in Croatian language. And of course, Google is the biggest blind user of the web because they can't see your beautiful design. Google can't see your amazing parallax. Google can't see everything else that you're doing on the site, but Google sees your markup and your everything that you do on the backside. So there is some, just quickly, I will not go into details, but these are the most common assistive technologies. Of course, the zoom, the screen readers, and browser configurations. These are all pretty common. Browser configurations is you can actually have settings in your browser where you can set the color schemes and something like that. So you always have, I don't know, the black background and yellow text on the pages and something like that. So this is also the people that are using. And of course, then there are captions, Braille keyboard, mouth mouse, but we'll not go there into detail, just so you know what is the technology that people are using to accessing your web pages. So how to start? Actually, there are 3 parts to start. We'll be just talking about the last one because first you have to design for web accessibility. This is, of course, for all of you that are also the designers. So you have to first, of course, design the proper, I don't know, the color contrast and everything else, the easy navigation and stuff like this. Then, of course, they're creating the content for web accessibility. And the last is developing for web accessibility. So the final part is the part that we'll be talking about. And this is the part that is important in the context of this Drupal camp or in the context of this event. Just quickly, you already heard it before, those of you who were on the morning session about the web accessibility. There's these are the guidelines for creating accessible web pages. This stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and they are developed by Web Accessibility Initiative under W3C, but we're not going into that details. But in general, you have 3 levels on conformance. So level A is something that actually must be on each page. Level AA is something that really should be on each page, and the last level is really for pages that really need some, when you already know that you will have quite a lot of viewers having some sort of disabilities. Okay, we'll begin with simple examples that I really like to show. And this is actually and we'll be talking about screen reader. So this is the markup, and this is the end result. And of course, if a person with a screen reader taps to this button, you don't have any information about this button because you have some class that is, of course, giving you this icon. But if you are blind and the screen reader comes to here, it will just say button. And of course, the blind person will click the tap button again, and they will say button. So they don't even know what this button is. They just know that there is some sort of button. So to help them, we have to put title in there. And now the screen reader knows what this button is all about. And now the screen reader will say edit button. And when the user will click tab, will press on tab button, it will say remove button. So this is a really simple way of how to do it. But then you can have a broken class. I don't know, something wrong with your CSS, and you can't get this. So now the blind people will exactly know what this button means, because the screen reader will say edit button. But now all of you, now I created a page that is not accessible to people who can see. So again, a big accessibility issue. So the best way is doing it like this. You have an icon, you have a text inside of it, and you also have a title. Now, I mean, this is more safe. And now if my class is broken, I still see that this is edit button, and the screen reader reads edit button. So this is just a simple example of what to look for. We have also the images. We have 3 types in general. It's informative images, which is like this Marvin the robot, and of course our logo, which is image of text, and of course you have functional image. So if a screen reader comes to the markup like this, it will usually read the alternative text inside of the anchor markup. So if the screen reader comes to this, it will say print document link. So they know that there is a link. They know that this link is doing a printing document. Of course, we also have a bad practice from the previous slide, because if this image is broken, then the people who can see won't know what this is all about. Okay, and now let's start with Drupal and accessibility. Drupal was pretty good in terms of accessibility in Drupal 7 already, but now in Drupal 8, actually out of the box, you really have a strong accessibility tool. And what I'll be talking about later is actually how easy you can break it. So just to try to remind you that you have everything out of the box, but it's really easy to break everything. So it's Drupal 8 has out of the box, of course, all the templates and all the markup that is providing is having all the semantic rules for accessibility. So it has HTML5 text, like article, section, header, and it has the roles for all, so for main content, for sidebars. In sidebars, you usually have this role. Then it has ARIA properties and ARIA states also out of the box. So if a field is required, you have ARIA required. This is also something that screen readers can read and know what this means if something is required, and if something, you have labeled by, and you also have ARIA states, which are this field is disabled, invalid on if you have validation errors on forms, you get the ARIA invalid attribute inside of it. Again, all of you that have been to the previous session about web accessibility knows exactly what the ARIA is. Actually, the attributes you can put in markup so the screen readers knows more about the elements. It has more context. This is again really important. Google likes semantic markup, so if you do all this, Google will like you really, really more than if you don't do this. So just remember that you're not only doing it for accessibility, you're also doing it for Google, because as we said before, Google is the biggest blind user of all. We have color contrast. This is actually more for the designers, but I just wanted to show you that Drupal core developers and contributors actually do care. So this is an actual issue on Drupal.org where they wanted to increase the contrast on inline form error text, and this was actually the proposed solution. So this was an actual issue of Drupal core before it was even live. So it was and inside of the 7 team. So inside of the administration team, the color contrast was not good for inline form error text, and someone created an issue, and it was fixed, and it is now in the core. What is also new is that the alternative text is now required by default. So all of you that you've been working in Drupal 7, you knew that there was an option to do that, but it was not activated by default. And of course, all the ignorant developers just said, well, I don't need it. The thing I will getting is I will have a calls from a client that will be saying, why do I have to write an alternative text? I don't know what the alternative text should be. It takes me too much time. Well, now this is enabled by default. So you can enable alternative field, and it's also required by default. So you can now really say that this is an image of Peter Griffin. That's really exciting. Really important part is Drupal announce, especially for front-enders who are working with JavaScript. Drupal announce is now part of core. You were able to get the Drupal announce in Drupal 7 as well. But this is a simple way to turn text into speech for screen readers. So it's really important on dynamic pages, because everything you have to use it every time when you change something dynamically. For example, you add a new content at the bottom, you add the new items, you have, let's say, a new sticker that refreshes every 2 minutes on the Ajax calls, you know, and you have to notify the users that are using the screen reader that you made a change on the page. Something changed on the page. They are not able to see it, but you have to announce that to them. A good example is this thing here. You know, it is in the admin toolbar. So when you click this button, there's actually this code. This is from core on orientation change. This function is called when you click this button, and there's actually a function calling Drupal announce, and of course it goes to translate as well, and to announce the tray orientation change to, of course, you get this attribute. And now every time you click this button, because someone can come to the page, and every time you click this button, and if they're coming to with a tab and they don't see this page, if they select it, this will be, the screen reader would loudly say tray orientation change to vertical. And of course, if they go back, the screen reader will say tray orientation change to horizontal. So this is really important also for the pages that are adding new content at the bottom, you know, those news items. When you scroll to the bottom, you add 5 new items at the bottom, and another 5, and another 5. It's really good if, when you do this, when you add those items, just do this Drupal announce as well, and inform the people that are blind 5 new items were added at the bottom of the list. So they have, you know, of course, all the blind people have really good imagination, because they must have it. And in this way, they will be able to tell why, I mean, they will be able to tell that there was additional items added. Another thing that was also added to core is the Drupal tabbing manager. And the tabbing manager enables constrained tabbing through the links. A good example is this contextual links. From core, there's contextual links or overlay. And if you go with the tabbing on the page, this, and you're now at this element, the second one after it will be this. And of course, if you don't press space, the third one will be this one. But if you press the space, the tabbing must continue in here. It must go to quick edit, edit, delete, and after delete, it goes to this link here. So this is something the Drupal tabbing manager is doing. And also inside of the overlay, if you have the overlay module enabled, when the overlay is opened, it just limits the tabbing inside of the overlay. Because if you have an overlay over the page, you don't want to tab on the things that are in the background. You have to limit the tabbing inside of that page, and of course you must have a close button. But you know, this is Drupal tabbing manager is the tool that you'll be using for creating this functionality, in order that you are able to go inside of these links as well. This is also important for example, when you have a drop-down button or menus, for example, that have, you know, 2 levels, and the second level opens when you click on something on the first level, so you get additional items. It's really important to run this, so the tapping will go inside of these items, and maybe even loop, if you have the close button at the end, maybe even loop inside of the links. Then there are some other things that improved in accessibility. Lots of them connected to form API, so like field sets. So now radio buttons and checkboxes are now by default wrapped in field sets. Autocomplete because jQuery UI is also an open source tool, and of course they had to manage the accessibility. Before in Drupal 7, there was a custom autocomplete dialog, and now it's using the jQuery UI because we don't want to reinvent something that someone already really did really good. There is also an experimental module. It's called inline form errors, and I mean, it is at the moment, it's still experimental. I think it will go to the stable in 8.4, but there's no need of there's no reason of not using it. I mean, you can just enable it and you have the inline form errors exactly at the field where the error is. And now we come to the part where this would be, I don't know, 4 years ago, and me sitting on that side, I would probably, in about 50% of the cases, I would do, yeah, I did it. So hopefully I will try to show some mistakes that you are making or were making in the past, and you're not doing it anymore. Okay, so this is a simple markup. This is in Bartik theme. This theme is in core. It has all the good elements. So this is the header. It has the HTML5 header element. It has the role banner, which is used for header elements. It has the ARIA label, which goes to translate as well. So, and inside of this, you then have some section and the 3 different menus. I mean, the secondary, primary, and the header region. Then there's classy theme, of course, a little more minimalistic, but still it has the header element and it has the role banner. So the users which can't see the page, through the screen reader, they have quite a lot of context what this element that I'm currently on is all about. And then we have those 3 guys. Probably remember them. Yeah, they will know how they do it. Actually, I invented the name for them. They're actually working for the agency called Ignorant, and of course they're creating the Ignorant theme, which looks something like this. So there's no HTML5 elements, there's no roles for each element, and there's actually nothing that a screen reader could help themselves by coming to this page. Another example, sidebar, also the Bartik theme first. Okay, some ifs, but then you have a site element used. You have role complementary that is usually used. The purpose of role complementary is that we are talking, this is not the main content of the page, but it is something that is somehow connected to that page. And classy theme, again, a little more minimalistic, but it has what it needs to be. And then the ignorant theme has some div inside, which with class sidebar first, and then there's whole markup of blocks and everything else. So again, nothing to show to screen reader that the screen reader, and of course, we're talking again, Google doesn't know what this is as well. So if you put the right markup, Google will also know what you're trying to say with this part of the code. Skip link. Don't remove this and this. Never, ever, by any chance. I did it. So this is usually the first part of the code in HTML template. This comes right after the body tag, and is actually the first element that you come if you press the tab button. The point of this link is that someone who is using keyboard to go through the page has a way to skip the header links, skip the entire menu, skip everything that is above the main content, and go directly to the main content of the page. So if you come to the About Us page, you already know what it is all about, because before you clicked on a button saying link to About Us page. And now you click that link and you already know that I came to the About Us page. And now you have 10 menu items at the top. You have something else. You have search probably somewhere in the header and everything else. But the first element is skip to main content link. So the first time the user will press the tab button, and after that press the space button, it will go directly to the main content of that page. So this is usually in page HTML before the H1 header usually, and this is right after the body tag. So this is really important. You can add additional tabs because additional links. Instead of removing this one, it's better to add additional links, which will say skip to main content, skip to footer, skip to, I don't know, something else. So the user will come to the page, and the first 3 links will be actually links to parts of the page somewhere lower, so they don't have to press the tab button 20 times to get to there. And of course, we also have here, you can see, we also have these Drupal classes that are available. Behind that, there's a CSS that is actually hiding this from displaying, but when you come to it with the focus, it's shown. So these are also the classes that you should be using in Drupal. So yeah, don't remove this in templates. Also, of course, Tweak is a powerful tool now. You can do really amazing things. You were also able to do that with page templates. And of course, you can get the field URL directly, and why not use it, of course? I mean, there's really some special ways the designer really had a fun time doing it really in the difficult way. And I'll just print out the URL directly into the image tag, and that's it. Of course, previously, some site builder or backend developer said that the alt text is required by default. So the content editor had to write in the alt text. But then you never print out the alt text. So this is the reason why you shouldn't be using this. There's so many better ways of doing this. You know, you can create your own Tweak file for this file, but really know what you're doing, or you can pre-process to just do some special class, because the reason of doing this is often because you want to have a special class in that image. And instead of doing some pre-process for this field and adding an additional class, you end up with something like this in a template, and because this is here and there's no alternative text, there's no reason that the content editor should be adding any alternative text. Forms are also a part of the page where it's really important that the people who can't see the page are able to navigate through the form and actually fill out the entire form. The form API will do most of the work for you. You just have to use it. So don't create your own strange code for building forms. Just go through the form API. Use the title property, even if the design is done in a way that the title is not displayed on the form, which is bad anyway, but let's say that this is the case. Then the title display is something that you want to use. And if you put it, so if you set the title and you set the title display to false, it will still be in the markup and it will have the class visually hidden, which means it will be there and the screen reader will read it out loud, but only the users who can see the page won't read it. I mean, won't see it. And of course, the description is also highly advisable, especially in the cases where you have to tell some context about the fields that the user should input. Also, use field sets. I said before, the radio buttons are actually, and the checkboxes are actually the inputs of certain type. And if you have 2 text fields and then you don't create a field set for 3 checkboxes, it's usually pretty messy for the ones that don't see the page. You can see that one is an input and the other is a checkbox, but if you use the field set, just group the radio buttons and checkboxes together. Also, if you have 3 different input fields for date, it's also advisable to put them in the field set and then create 3 input fields for day, month, and year, for example. This is also a good practice to do. And this is almost always a bad idea. Don't give initial focus to the input on the load, because maybe some rare cases, the login screen, when the only 2 items are username and password and there's nothing else on the page. This is really one of the situations that you may be using the JavaScript to focus directly to the input field, but other than that, don't do it, because they will get confused, because usually they started from the top of the page and then they come to the, for example, search page, and all of a sudden they are somewhere down there because there's an input field, and don't put the focus directly in there. Don't put the cursor in there, because they should start from the top, because this is the way they were using the page for the last 5 or 10 minutes before you started to interrupt. One of really important things about this is also the sign up to our newsletter pop-ups. It's also really confusing, because don't do it, or if you really have to do it, maybe if the reason of doing this is I mean, maybe you can do it, you can get the emails on some other ways, but if you are doing, use the Drupal announce that I was talking about before. So at least you announce the users that you put them the pop-up on the screen. Otherwise, you know, the screen reader will read the page, and then it will come to a certain point when you get the pop-up sign up to our newsletter. But of course, the screen reader will just start to read sign up for our newsletter, and then in the middle of the sentence, the people who can't see the page will be listening to it and going to the story, and then all of a sudden you will say sign up for our newsletter. You know, it's really confusing for the people who can't see it. Even for us, it's disturbing, but at least we can see what's going on. So don't use it. Ajax, I've already talked about Drupal announce. Use it. All the dynamic changes on the page, they're really tricky for screen readers. You know, it's jumping from here and there because some new content is coming. It's really confusing. And also the pages that are adding new content by scrolling. I've talked about it before. So when you come to a certain point, you get 6 new news items. Use Drupal announce. At least you announce the people that you are doing something. CSS, just a couple of things. Make this really visible, not some gray thin line around it that you can barely see it. This is also for the colorblind people, and for the, you know, it's not necessary that you're totally blind. You can be 70% blind, and you zoom the page to 200%, and you can look the page. But then they're still often using the tab key and focus. Really do it in a visual way. And also you can, as a CSS developer, you can also help yourself by using the role attributes. For example, this is the color of the paragraphs inside of the main content, because role main can only be one. So by the rules, there can only be one main part of the page. So if you have a special paragraphs in the main part of the page, just help yourself and use it. Okay, and now this was actually more about, this was more or less the things that are really important, and the things where Drupal developers usually do some messy things. But there are some Drupal contrib modules that can also help you out. One of them is the block area landmark roles. This is actually extending the block functionality. It's for Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. And it actually gives you an additional field inside of the block settings where you can set the role to that block. So if you have a block of tags, you can add the role content info inside. And this is really useful for the CEO, for the people with the screen reader, and for everything. It's really useful. So you can use this tool. Of course, you then have to know what you're doing, because it wouldn't be good if you would put the main role equals main here. So you have to know what you're doing, but it is helpful. Switch theme. There are cases where there are special themes for color blindness and stuff like this. This is an easy module. I mean, it's only for Drupal 7, but maybe there will be a Drupal 8 version. It gives you a new block to easily switch theme. So you have a theme for colorblind people or something else, or with a larger font size or something like that. You can easily switch it, and you can also create your custom links by using this parameter here. And actually, this link, when you click it, will reload the page with this theme enabled. So it's useful if you have a client that really has 2 different or 3 different themes, depending on this. There's also high contrast module. In this module, you don't have to create your own special theme, but this module is doing it has its own CSS, which is then populated on the page. It's for both the Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. These are the special settings. So this is the title of the block. You have different widgets, so it can be links, it can be some radio buttons with submit, and you can also use Ajax. So there are two options. So the entire page can reload, or you can just have an Ajax and it will dynamically change the CSS. And it looks something like this. So here you have high contrast, enable, disable, and if you click enable, this is actually the way this page is shown. So it's really for the people who are colorblind, and these contrast ratios are really high, and they can really see the page very well. There's also a module for Drupal 7 accessible forms, but I'll not go into details because Drupal 8 actually now has all of the things that Drupal 7 module had. So there are some ARIA roles, required label, required attributes, and stuff like this. So another module. And there, of course, besides the Drupal modules, there are other tools that you can help yourself. Most of them, of course, browser extensions. There is accessibility developer tools for Chrome. You have so it's below, where you have the developer bar at the bottom. It adds audits here, and you can have the results actually for all the things that are wrong on the page. Similar module, also doing the accessibility checker, but it lays on the left side of your page, so it's not inside of the developer tools, but it's on the left side, but it's doing pretty much the same job. There are some other web accessibility extensions for Chrome and Firefox, and some other contrast checker. I mean, you can just Google accessibility extensions Chrome, and you'll get quite a lot of them. This is for contrast checking, so of course, really important. I mean, this is the part where the designers would have to care about it, but because they're not all the designers are not aware of all the accessibility issues, and you can run the contrast checker, and you can go back to the designer and say, look, this text over there in the footer, it really has a bad contrast. It's not visible to quite a lot of people, and you can run this contrast analyzer, and it really gives you. There's actually a web accessibility toolbar for Internet Explorer, so they care as well. So there actually is one. There are some other web-based tools. They're all of them are pretty much the same. They're just working in a different way. When you have an extension, you have something in your browser. When you use the web-based tool, you just put in the URL and you get the results. So nothing, no rocket science there. There are also quite a lot of books, but this is only, why I'm only adding this URL is because this is like a digital book, and it's like, I don't know, $10 or $15, and it's like a PDF of 100 sites or something like that. But what I really like about this book is that it actually has 3 separate PDFs for the level A, level AA, and level AAA. So all 3 levels that you should care. And it's actually a checklist. There's a guideline, there's a description, then you take notes. So you can really just print out those papers, and someone can go through the checklist. Non-text content is the guideline. Description is provide text alternatives for non-text content. Is it okay? You run the accessibility checker in the browser, and you go through all the errors, and you are fixing it until you can say, okay, this is passed, and you can go on and on and on for all the others. So this is really useful. This is why I'm actually adding it here. There's quite a lot of resources on w3.org. Most of them, they are here. You'll be able to see these links. But if you go to w3.org/WAI, so this is Web Accessibility Initiative, from here you really have lots and lots of resources. For example, of how people with disabilities use web. So you can actually say that. So then there's tips for getting started, tutorials for different elements, before and after demo. This is really good because you have actual cases where at first there was no accessibility features, and then there are, and you can add an extension, you can add a screen reader to your browser, and you can really see the difference when you go to the page. So actually, this is more or less it. What I will do now until to the end is just give you simple advices. Accessibility is not an afterthought. Never go into building web page and say, okay, I know the site is good, that is accessible, but I don't have time now. Let's go on that at the end. It's a mess of doing it at the end. I mean, if you just, for example, if you just think about that, you will have to go through all the templates, through all the CSS, and I don't know what else, just to or maybe at the beginning you will say, okay, we don't now need alternative text for images because I hate it, because I'm putting in the demo content, and I really hate it to have to type the alternative text for each image all of the time. Of course, you will forget to enable it afterwards when the page will go to production. So don't think about accessibility as an afterthought. It also makes your website easier to understand, because even if you can see the page and everything, if you're looking for web accessibility rules, there's definitely there is a possibility that your page will be more understandable, because you will structure the page better. You won't have some strange pieces of elements somewhere, because it will be really well structured, because you are doing it for the people that can't see it. And of course, the search engines like it. And of course, you can use it as an opportunity. Go out, pitch yourself as a good accessibility developer. Sell this to the client, especially some NGOs, some non-government organizations and stuff like this. They love it. I mean, as soon as you say this page will be available for all of them, for all the people, whether they have a visibility issue, whether they have I don't know, they have no arms, so they are using your web page differently. I mean, I know how to give those people a special ways of presenting them your web page. So this is also something that you can really go out and sell, actually. And a big thank you to all of you. Again, this is my name, this is my email, this is my nickname, or so. Okay, thank you. And of course, if you have any questions, now is the time to do it.